Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'm Tom Hogan, the director of the Milwaukie Poetry Series, and I want to welcome you to our March reading here tonight at the Ledding Library here in Milwaukie. We are very happy to be hearing from Judy Montgomery, Judith H. Montgomery, in about 5 minutes when I introduce her. But I really want to say thank you to all of you, because we know that there are a lot of other things that you could be doing, and you're choosing it to be here and hear poetry and be together. I want to also welcome and really say the same thing to those of you who have logged in on the live stream. So we are live streaming tonight, and thank you for being here with wherever you are. So that's one of the beauties of having this Zoom capability, is that people can log in from wherever you are, and we can come together that way. So thank you very much for that. I want to say just a little bit about the flow of the evening, because I'm going to introduce Judy in a few minutes, as I said. Then we will have Judy reading. We'll have a Q&A period. And we have an interview that she and I did. And the interview is going to be available, but we need to take a little break after the Q&A, because the computer is going to come up here for us to be able to do that. So we had a little technical difficulty, about that. So just be aware of that. There's refreshments over here. Please help yourself to the refreshments. Judy brought her books, so she'll be selling her books, but that's what's going to happen after the reading as far as the interview. I want to make some thanks. Thanks to the City of Milwaukie. They've been supportive from the beginning. Thanks to the Ledding Library. Thank you very much. We're very happy with the being in the new library. Those of you who may not have been here for a while, notice that we do have art, and this is the project of the Milwaukie Arts Committee. So there are going to be rotating shows here. So we're very delighted to have that and to have all the color here. Thanks to the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee. We do have a committee, and Kristen and I are standing. We also want to thank my lovely wife, Jane, and David Filer. David came really early tonight and set the chairs up, so you have him to thank for that. What? Yeah. So thank you for that, and also want to thank Willamette Falls Media Studios. So they're responsible for the tech and everything and making this all happen. So yes, a big hand for the Willamette Falls Media Studios. They're magicians. I also want to welcome the Oregon Poet Laureate Emerita, Paulette Peterson, who is with us here tonight. Thank you, Paulette, for being here. It's always wonderful to see you. I want to call your attention to a contest that's starting. It's sponsored by the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. It's a poetry writing contest, and it's going to open on Monday, and it will run through April. This is poetry only this year, so please take a look at that. We're one of the sponsors, and the invitation and recognition of the winners is going to be at the Milwaukie Poetry Series First Friday reading on June 6th. So the winners of the contest will be the featured readers on June 6th at 6:30 at the St. John the Evangelist Episcopal Church in Milwaukie, where we have our regular First Friday readings. So we're very excited about that. Take a look at it, and it is open to people who live in or work in Clackamas County, live or work. I've been looking forward to this reading tonight, and it's my pleasure to introduce Judith H. Montgomery, Judy Montgomery. She gardens, lives, and writes in Oregon City. Her poems appear in Gyroscope, South Florida Poetry Review, the Inflectionist Review, and Epiphany, among other journals. Her chapbook, Passion, received the Oregon Book Award for Poetry. Congratulations. That's okay. She's been awarded several residencies and fellowships and has received multiple nominations for a Pushcart Prize. Her second full-length collection, Literary for Wound and Bloom, a finalist for the Marsh Hawk Prize, appeared in 2018. Her prize-winning narrative medicine chapbook, Mercy, appeared from Wolf Bridge Press in 2019. Her latest chapbook, The Fairy Keeper, received the 2024 Grayson Book Chapbook Competition Prize. She loves to revise and revise again, she says, and takes great pleasure in reading friends' manuscripts and making suggestions. I hope everyone has a copy of the broadside. If you don't, Kristen will get you one. And join me in welcoming our poet this evening, Judy Montgomery.
Thank you, Tom.
Please silence your telephonic devices too. I forgot to say that.
So, not to be repetitious, but I need to do thanks also, of course, to this wonderful library. Last time I was here, I got to sneak out and take a few books out on my way back to my car. To the poetry series, and to Tom and Jane, of course, for their support of it, and those who are on the committee. And a special thank you to those of you who came out tonight in the rain when you could have been staying home with your feet up. So many, many thanks for your coming, and a special bow to the techie person at the back who is taking care of all the things that could go wrong electronically and fixing them. So I appreciate you being there. I thought I would begin, since we're in a library, with a library poem. In fact, I'm going to read from a couple of my different books in addition to the latest one, which I hope you will enjoy. So make sure that I've gotten everything in order here. I've got stickies everywhere. Here we go. So this is from, I'm not here. Okay, I know, I've been told I have a light voice that doesn't carry well, so I'll try to talk more deeply. This is from a very long poem, which I'm not going to read, called A Cultural History of Fences. I'm going to read just part 3. Here's how I lived when I was 9, wobbling down River Road, one hand on the handlebars, one tucked against my chest, cradling a book freight of tasty words, spurt, crusty, petulant, luminescent, pride, the soccer field bank to right, the river bank to left, rooted in red alder, purple thistle, and the trefoils of poison ivy shine, wobbling, as I said, across Housatonic Bridge to town, past Watson's aging soda fountain, past the obelisk that scored the dead, I skidded home at the snug brick library where all the books I ever wanted waited on the shelves. Mrs. Barton pointed me upstairs. In the far nook, my stool set eye to eye with Walter Farley. All afternoon, I knocked my knees together, rushed a dazzle on the backs of bays and chestnuts, mouthing forelock and withers, winding fingers in the manes, and setting my black stallion, my red fire island stallion, to the dangerous fences which we always cleared. And then one other from Red Jess, which came out 20 years ago, but it's still one of my favorites. I'm going to read a poem that was my husband's favorite. Originally I thought, I'll read a March poem, and then I realized that I hadn't written one yet. So you're going to have to make do with a February poem. And I'm reading this thinking about the darkness that may be overcoming us and hoping that it will not, and that we will gather together in order to move against it. At the Metolius River, we walk in falling snow. We step together from the porch into late winter's violeting dark. About us, February flurries its snow smatter. veil-looping blue drifts piled against the bridge rail. Freezing waters flex below to an avalanche of falls. We fall silent in the river's hush, stand isolated, chill in the brilliant hush of snow. Once these woods summered us in green, now alders frost-bowed waited under white. The lone dipper exercises joint by stiff joint, bobbing on a black rock compromised in ice. Overhead, in perilous geometry, ponderoses plunge to a frozen halt. Snags, seared by lightning thrust snow-blind, mauls of wind crack everything apart. You move away to crumbling river's edge. I shiver on a ledge of cold. But then, above, across the shut sky, paired geese wing and cry, here, home. You turn, we turn to each other through the dark, while snow shadows land, water, rock to essential bones, each tree its ladder, bird its scarf of song, each branch its load of beauty, our hands a bridge to cross the coming night. So I'm going to read a couple of poems from my previous chapbook, the one that won the Poetry Narrative Medicine Award. It had a very complicated title. It's called Mercy, and some of you know my husband was diagnosed with a rare cancer in 2004 and was given a year or two to live, and instead we got 20, which is just the most amazing blessing. So I'd like to read a couple of poems from there. This one is called Aloe Vera, and those of you who are cooks or gardeners will know that if you keep an aloe vera plant in your kitchen and you burn yourself, you pluck a leaf, split it, put the juice on, and the pain just absolutely disappears. It's an amazing healing plant, and I don't have one right now, so I need to go to the store. So this is called Aloe Vera. It's when I was calling to find out the results for my husband's latest scam. On hold, I clamped the slick phone between neck and shoulder, waiting for your results. The timer dings, crack the oven door, reach for bread, and my free hand brushes the scorching rack. Aloe Vera burn balm slumps above my sink, its pale green leaves reaching for winter light. No word yet. Bread on cooling rack, I break off a leaf, slit it with my nail, rub cool juice across the burn. My skin glows red, a short slash left by the oven rack, and this kitchen wavers back to that other kitchen where my good girl, 9-year-old self cleans up after supper while the family tends corn and lettuce in our garden plot. Mute, I can only watch the girl run hot water sudsing in the sink, stack plates, and turn to the stove where the unattended heavy frying pan waits, black, squat, hot on its red burner. This she does not yet know. Two-handed, she grasps and swings the iron skillet toward the suds, but halfway across the floor, flinches at the pain and sizzle of her palms. She does not drop the searing pan. She turns, steps back, and sets it on the burner. Only then does she cry out and run to the kitchen door and sob how she's been hurt. The doctor is called and comes and pats salve on her blistering palms, wrapping them in gauze. 2nd degree, she hears, and does not yet know what that confers on her. Her wordless endurance. No word yet. Or how deep the heat has driven into her small hands. I kiss my palm to her. She prepared us for our future, where any news that burns across the wires can be withstood. And then just to give you a little sense of what the withstanding required. I sometimes check in with 3 Elements Review, which some of you may know and not about. They set up 3 words every couple of months and say, write a poem with these 3 words in it. And I've done that twice, and it was really fun. So this is one of those poems. I can only remember 2 of the words, murmur and glaze, but you'll see that they show up in here. This is a poem written after my husband's first major surgery, which took 3 surgeons and 7 hours to do. Night work. The machines that run your body keep on murmuring, echo a kind of counterpoint to the murmur of the night shift as nurses rustle into place beyond the door. I eye the monitors. They scribble on dark screens the green pulse of beat and breath, your vitals swimming deep within the poppy drift they slip into your veins. My needle falters. My handiwork falls slack in my lap. I've threaded the eye with bright silks, cottons twisted to stitch warp and weft of linen. But your abdomen, stitched shut as well, but not by serviceable thread, metal punched into place. I try to imagine your surgeon's sure hands as he wielded his shining stapler, cross-hatching gaping flesh, and dappling antibiotics orange glaze against infection. But my mind keeps side-sliding to prospects for mistake, some crucial severed nerve, anesthesia that deepens you past sleep. I pick up my work hoop that holds the linen tight. There's comfort here. I can pierce a knot, cross-stitch to pattern. Stitches can be picked, any fault corrected. Now, some of you may have noticed that I've had my own surgery recently. Whenever you have surgery, you end up with a scar of some sort. My husband had these gigantic tracts of scars on him. I have my own, 2 hips replaced, and now surgery here. And we always regard scars as something to be hidden. You know, people rub special ointments in them like they want them to go away. And I have had a different take on that, because after all, the scar is what heals you up. And so I have a blessing poem for scars. It's called Yet Praise the Scar. Consider how, breached by blade or flame, the body rushes to repair, quick clot the hurt. Fibers stitch swift to shut inviolate the gape of flesh. Such fierce haste to mend, but not what we'd call grace. The awkward seam puckers up, cross-linked ridge of collagen contracting, stung flesh. Each scar an X'd fence of barbs that interrupts the seamless landscape of saved skin. Yet even itching, aching, tender to the thumb, each scar's a scarlet witness on or in the body, inscribing its stubborn devotion, hurt, hurry, heal. So maybe you can look at your scars a little differently. I'm sure I will. Now I'm going to put these down and turn to the most recent book, which, in my opinion, has the most gorgeous cover. Someone thinks it's Cabo San Lucas. I thought maybe it was the Oregon Coast. No one's been able to figure out exactly where this came from. My publisher's design person picked it out for me, and I was just very, very pleased. It's this one focuses on my caregiving for my parents who lived into their 90s. My mother with what was eventually designated as Alzheimer's. My dad with a very sharp mind, but all kinds of bodily ills. In fact, a lot of his had to do with joints, so I think I inherited his genes. But while I was caregiving for them, they moved over to Bend to be near us. I was also caregiving for my husband at the same time. So it was a substantial burden. It was interesting, and you could see why I had to read that poem about withstanding whatever comes. So the ferry keeper is sort of named after Karen, the one who pulls the dad across the river Styx to the other side. The poem called The Fairy Keeper, which is the title poem and the first poem in the book, is when I suddenly had an image of myself, not as Karen, but as the boat. So I'm going to read that first. And the title runs into the first line. The fairy keeper becomes the only boat, lays her body flat, bellying black water that licks below the dock, her chest a prow, her face the fixed gaze of a figurehead. Steadied against drift, she shivers as her pale family clambers in. Stem and stern, they shift from pain to place, wanting not to spill across the bow. Their crutches, tanks of oxygen, prop stiff on her thwarts. Setting match to wick and wax, her parents light a candle to counter dark, set it burning at her hull of bone, while bearded medics fumble loose the rope. Cast off, her boarders brace their feet against the staves of her ribs, arrange an offering of coins, an arc of glitter about the shadowed candle. Hot wax drips to sear the keel that is her spine. Unmoored, she sets course toward a compassless horizon. Bearing her burdens on her back, she strokes toward what she must believe to be the other shore. And I need a little drink of water. Sorry. The next poem that I'm going to read, I've chosen because I think in order to understand how the book unfolds, you need to know a little about my parents' marriage. They were married for 68 years. They were totally devoted to each other. I think in their years just before they got married, they felt kind of abandoned by their families. And so when they met, it was like, okay, karma, kismet, whatever. And they were just like this for their entire lives. So I have, this poem is an ekphrastic one. It's based on a picture of them taken after they were married that first year in 1943. And I'll put it over on the book table afterwards so you can see it just for interest. Where light collects. For courtesy, they pause, mid-step in foxtrot, and ease their bodies one half breath apart, but do not turn to look into the lens. The flash has etched on paper his meticulously parted hair, lace ripple of her clinging dress. All else fades behind. Crepe paper sway, the other dancers' stopped steps. So proper, this couple who carry within them the urge that will be me. Her bodice barely grazes his lapel. It's not their bodies where the light collects. Light lives inside their gaze, a subtle current hum. They see only each other, even as daughters will be born and will try them. As her waist will thicken, his careful hair skimp gray. Her mind will clot and fail until at last he must hail a bus to visit his beloved, who will not be certain of his name, though her eyes will glisten when he steps across the foster home's cane-worn sill. They'll settle close on the couch, he tucking her inside the arc of his arm. She will doze on his arthritic shoulder, two fused one in October's gold slant. I slip the image back in place between glass and velvet backing. Here may they hover, oblivious to what waits beyond the flash. And I don't know how well you can see it from here, but this is the picture of my parents. So I'll put that over there later. So a couple of you who have been kind enough to come to my other readings have heard this poem before, but I really have to read it. So I hope it's not too much. As my mother moved into her 80s, she stopped cooking. She fell and broke her shoulder. She had double pneumonia. She had colon surgery. It was like 3 strikes and you're out. She stopped cooking. She stopped cleaning for the house. My dad taught himself how to cook. Things were not the same, and eventually they realized that they needed to leave the house and move to independent or assisted living. So my husband and I said, why not come to Bend, where we are? And they did. My mother was a wonderful gardener, and you can imagine the difference between gardening here and gardening there. So there's a little bit of that in this poem. And the title runs into the first line. What my mother has left behind, luxuriating beds of Peruvian lilies, alstroemeria, cream and amethyst petals, testimony to her green heart. They bloomed beneath the windows of the valley home my parents left to move close to me, high, dry, desert plateau where such lilies fail to thrive, wincing at 0. Where my father unfolds her metal walker from the trunk and gently steers her to the plastic tubs in Safeway. She points to a handful of rubber-banded blossoms, pale pink this week, and he fetches them, will awkwardly array them in the green vase that anchors their assisted living rooms. The new blooms yearn toward window sun, and the leaves twisting, leaning for light, pale to yellow as they age. When I knock, the door's little blue glass heart quivers on its nail. My father opens to welcome me into their home, but before I can bend to kiss the off-kilter rouge roses on my mother's cheek or praise the new bouquet, she wails, "Oh, I've got alstroemeria," and I've stopped short by her distress. "Alstroemeria," she said, "my mother had it, and it's catching up to me," and she taps her forehead as though to dislodge another stuck word. My father and I glance above her head. We catch her twisting diction. Now, when my mother found out she had Alzheimer's, which was just a couple of years before she died at the age of 91, she was desperate. She was so distressed that this, in fact, had happened to her, which she had been afraid of all her life. And it took a lot to get her out of being so depressed. But then after a while, she forgot that she had it, and she became the happiest mother I ever had. It was wonderful. Everything I did was great. She loved my husband. She was just jolly and joyful and cheerful. And then the last 6 months, there was another change, and she became better. And those of you who have parents with, or have had parents with Alzheimer's know that those mood changes are not unusual. So here is one of them. My mother stars in her own grim fairy tale. She fights her future. I should never have been born. You should never have been born. She must believe some uninvited fairy has stitched deep inside her brain an evil gift, genetic trick to be inherited by me. Does she mean to relieve me of this dark award, not to be nicked by the poisoned spindle? After lunch, I open the apartment door to let her push the walker back into the room, but she twists to fix me with her ice gaze. Who invited you in? Oh, interloper daughter, unwelcome guest. Alzheimer's thorny creep will keep thickening the palace of her world. Soon she won't know who she has become, but I remain the child wished never born. Oh, dear mother changeling, who was it crept in from the dark woods to touch you, warp you to another self, not the woman in the mirror who asked only to be loved? Who'd guess how you'd be trapped in your own fairy tale, withered crone, troll beneath a bridge, both banished princess and wicked queen stinging grief in each of us, should never have been born. Did you mean to spare me or condemn me? The sharp spindle pricks, this wound won't heal. My mom finally went to a foster home. My dad was just knocking himself out, and the chaplain from hospice said, "You would have been in the hospital yourself in 2 weeks if you hadn't agreed to let her go to a foster home right nearby where they lived," because he just tried taking care of her, and it was just finally too much at the end. She had a couple of, those mini strokes, and eventually a major one, and then she was gone. I was going to bring with me, but it was too heavy. I have a little silver pig. It's rather heavy. You just barely can see that it's a pig. So this poem is called Tarnish, which deals with the after effects. Oxygen sly chemistry kisses silver a different shade, a darker shade. Little shining pig, barely sketched in silver winged ears and attentive snout, you have bathed all year in air, yielding to tarnish. I can run my thumb across your sleek slopes, haunch and belly chilled by winter's incursions at the sill. Dear smirched, sweet pig, you are no magic lamp. No ghost figure can return across the waters. But I cannot watch you blotch above my desk. Cool silver better mirrors sorrow. I rub your curbs, my fingertips blacken, you shine like ice. I've found in losing family members that you often can't write those poems right away. You have to just wait and let them sit until something comes back to haunt you. So even though these feel like they're all in a row, they're all spread out over time and space in terms of their writing. My dad, after my mom died in 2011, my dad spent the year writing the story of Mom and Dad, basically, the story of Bill and Jean. He couldn't see well, so he used like 27 point type on his thing, and he wanted to write. And I said, please write what happened before you met Mom. No, that was not his life. So he wrote this big book all about their lives, and when it was done, he said, well, I think I have about 4 years left in me. And he was very close. And until near to the end, his mind was really sharp. He was a mathematician. He taught math for years, loved problem solving, loved organizing meetings so that everything turned out the way he wanted. Not that that's inheritable. Because he liked that sort of thing, he was very proud of the fact that even though his body was falling apart, his mind still worked until he had some falls. And then there was something else going on. My father, the mathematician, has fallen again. The ER's midnight pillow bleeds fractals beneath his head. Pinned under squares of sterile light, he shouts, DNR, DNR, from the gurney to an audience of 0 in his curtained cubicle. Breath clots in my throat as they let me enter. I can hardly speak my name. When he understands who is with him, he tells me what has happened as though it were a story problem he has solved, despite the sharp flash of pain and light as he fell full body backward to the tiled geometry of the kitchen floor. How he remembered to press the lifeline on his wrist, how the aides called the numbers 911. But he frets about the ambulance, the gurney, the bother to the EMTs, not to mention adding up the costs in his frugal head. He seems not to be aware that his split scalp still weeps blood, does not yet know how this fall has jarred something loose inside, concussion that in 3 months' time will rob his tongue of words, numbers, his equation-solving mind of answers to what he knows must be simple problems. For now, he's intent on reminding anyone in the room not to bring him back if his heart stops, which it has not yet, even as the reddened pillow signals some essential loss. I won't remind him later of what I hear pouring from his lips. DNR, do not resuscitate. He has long since decided he will not be a burden. Which is what we all wish as we get older. We don't want to be a burden to our children. I have my lovely daughter-in-law sitting back there. So always a wish as you get older. I mentioned earlier there are more poems that I'm not reading that have to do with gardening and the outdoors. And so this one kind of leans that way. I tried raising tomatoes in Central Oregon. And the first time I planted it outside the next morning, I took my husband, I said, come see my tomato. And there had been a killing frost overnight, and it was black and withered like this. Very hard. Over here, it's another story. Linger. The early girl leans heavy on the bars of the cage. In October's slow cold, 2 last tomatoes hang on, half red, half yellow. They hug their seeds, soak in late sun, huddle against fall. What else to do today but admit to slippage, gather this last harvest, then pause before the plant's gnarled stem, its drying leaves, the green branch dangling 2 persistent buds. Even to kneel and give thanks before this taking, thanks before setting the grave shovel to the roots. I'm going to read one more poem from the new book, and then I promised that I would read something new, so I have 2 poems at the end, and then I'll be done. And you can see if there are any cookies left. My husband, my mother and father all were on hospice, which is the most wonderful, wonderful service that I can recommend to you. People so often go on it too late, and they all ended up being on it about 6 weeks, which is a nice amount to help both the person who is dying and the caregiver. It's an enormous relief for the caregiver. One of the things they can do for you is say, it's time. They can tell by the subtle signs in the body that, yeah, it is time to come. It is time to come. And so this poem is called, it's the last poem in the book. It's called Abide, and it has an epigraph. Abide with me, fast falls the eventide. And if there are any lapsed Lutherans or Episcopalians in here, you may recognize the old hymn, Abide. The bedside phone breaches sleep, meaning time to pull on my discarded clothes, shiver on a coat, and set out in the car, headlights drawing me on white threads through dank April chill. And despite my hurry, I feel as though I'm moving underwater, entering timelessness as I slip through the door's pale curtain pulled aside for privacy. A world outside time, except what might be measured by pulse and breath, counted or not counted, number that holds me here with my father, but in this room there is only now. Even air suspends us, odor of peeled orange lingering as my own breath lingers, as I enter vigil in which there is before and to which there will be after. But for now we dwell, while beyond dark windows the tide of dew arrives, rising as vapor, descending in endless cycle down to slough, stream, sea. I settle beside the last bed in which he will lie, breathing until the room drifts like a boat upon a still lake, my father faintly rocking in his bed, his pale skin, his flickering pulse, and I reach to touch his hands, to hold him while I cling to the intimate buoy of his breath, for the balance of the night sending words his way, murmuring presence across his slowing body, until at last he arrives, we arrive, at that final pulse in his throat. Now I'm called to count the seconds. Sometimes those dying will pause between breaths, pause longer, which means nothing until time enters the room with that stopped breath, and the body is released by whatever might be spirit rising into timelessness, while I am clocked back into hours and days and years, marked by abide, by rise and fetch of eventide. All right, I think I have time for Two more poems. So some of you know I lost my husband of 36 years last June. And so I'm going to read two poems, one written when we'd just been married 10 years, I guess, and another just recent. So this is an older poem, but I like it. Connubial bliss. April hail knocks at shingles, piles in scarlet tulip cups that rub against the glass. Gray licks of alder smoke tongue the rough, chinked stones as you set our gathered pine knot, sap-laden on the fire. Bent-kneed, you hover at the hearth to watch the swollen knot release stored August forest to the flame. The lodgepoles sway overhead, the logging road dusting us in gold. Trout lilies burst a flare of white and green damp shade. Hazy cirrus threading long blue blurs of cascade sky. Drift of your thumb, tongue across my forearm, nape, arc of breast beneath the sleeveless blouse. The stopped moment as I slow my hand sliding down your chest, I say, dear. We stop to watch the flick of velvet ear, feather rump, her fawn tail's slight white twitch as she watches us. Then leaps the creek bank stitched in Jacob's ladder, legging purple lupin dusk. The pine knot hisses, blazes heat too hot to linger by. You lean to stroke my shoeless foot. I shut my book, trace your perfect curve of ear. The old familiar shiver travels sparks to muscle, tendon, nerve. Again, the sweet release, the dough, the fire welling from the stored pool of sap. And then this one is from his last couple of days at home. We were able to keep him at home last summer. His heart was failing. And they brought the hospital bed, and we had it all set up so he could watch sports on TV and he could look out the window, but he really didn't want to be in that bed. He did not want to be bedbound. That was a big thing for him. But it happened. Vigil. When it is time for them to lift your failing body to rest in that dread hospital bed, I want for you more than the landscape of the TV screen, which in fact you are not going to watch again. Instead, just outside the window near your head, I shove the shepherd's crook deep into drizzled earth, hang the feeder, clear cylinder filled with shelled nuts, sunflower seeds, between the ginkgo tree and the violet blue hydrangea, so you can follow the flights of the buttery goldfinches, bright-lived, all rush and flutter, eager for the offered feast. I turn back to enter the slow house. I turn you to see my gift of a wild-winged view. You break into a smile. Of course you know birds, your other delight. We too know, but do not speak of how they will keep on feeding and living, how quickly they will interrupt any flurry to seek cover under the shimmering tree when the shadow of the sharp-shinned hawk passes overhead. 2 days pass, you stop looking, the hawk comes for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy, for being here and for sharing. We have a question and answer period now, a chance to ask some questions and give some thought if there is something that you would like to ask. Kristen will come around with the mic, and so please wait till she gets there, because we'd like to get the question on the recording as well as the answer. So we had some people said the answer was great, but we didn't hear the question. So, but she'll be there with the microphone. And I think
I need more water.
that's good. I want to ask you about writing and how you approach writing. And you talked about a couple of books that you wrote some time ago. One was 20 years ago. Has your writing process changed? How, as far as your approach, how did you approach the first book, and has it been the same with The Fairy Keeper? You know, or not? Yeah.
In some ways, 20 years ago, or actually more than 20 years ago, it was easier because I was dumb and I didn't know anything. So I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. I was taking classes with Mike, I know was there. I can't remember if Diane was in. Chris Howell, and the guy who's at Syracuse now, Bruce Smith. And I was very excited. The first day of the workshop, Bruce said, well, we're going to write 2 poems a week, and at the end of the term, you're going to have enough for a chapbook. And I thought, whoa, challenge. This is for me. And there was something about that, which leads me to a related thought, which I think is really important, which is it's the company of other poets, the community of poets and of poetry that's played a huge role for me, because it's stimulating. I belong now to 2 poetry groups, and I take a workshop, seminar, and there are times when, you know, there's nothing coming, such as in the past week. And then today, while I was sitting down doing my dutiful exercises, all of a sudden I thought, oh, my husband once said to me, have you always been bad? And I thought, huh. So I sat down, so I have this new poem scribbled all over the sheets with the exercises. But when I first started, because I didn't know anything about where to send things or how competitive it was, I just started sending things out. And so it was easier in some ways. Now I kind of know too much, like, oh, they wouldn't like my work. I'm not going to send there. The writing itself, I think, has refined itself a bit. I've come up with the word haunted. When I'm haunted by something, that's when I write about it. And that could be haunted by a word or a photograph. I love to write about photographs and paintings, or something I overhear, or a scene, or something appalling on the news. So sometimes I write more political poems, which I did not read tonight. So I think it's changed somewhat. My poetry has become a little more shaped than it used to be. I used to write very free verse, and now it's a little bit more structured, although not formal. Will that do? Will that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, thank you.
There's okay. I see a question.
Right here.
Yes, she's coming. She's coming.
Ta-da.
Dance move. So the ones that I've heard you read are all clearly in your personal voice, and I would say each in present tense, so whether they were a long time ago or not, as you read them, they feel like this moment. Have you, how to phrase this, have you ever intentionally taken on a completely foreign voice, say a persona that's not at all you, or and taken a different point of view or different personality purposely? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, I have. I have a chapbook that I've sent out a few times and got some positive, response, and then some with no's, that I have to get back to when I'm done reading from this one. And it's all interviews of mythological and biblical characters. It also has a series of interviews with death. That's an interesting persona who sometimes screws up. It's mostly funny. I mean, I didn't have a lot of funny poems to read tonight. I tried to read some encouraging ones like the Metolius River and the Praise the Scar one, just so you wouldn't go out here feeling glum. But these are all tongue-in-cheek for the most part, and I find it a lot of fun to do that. I like to write in the voice of an onlooker to a scene. I, don't write about Persephone, I write about the three-headed dog or something like that. I have a long, and some of them are done as though they're being interviewed by People magazine, which has also been fun for me. It's an entirely different side to my normally staid self, but it's a lot of fun and I enjoy it a lot. So I have done that. The problem I ran into in my first book when I went out and did readings is a book in it called Gallop, about a little girl who goes in, she has a galloping heart, and she hears the doctors speak of that, and she thinks she has a horse in her heart. And so that she's not quite 5, and they go in for surgery, and what she says is, when he clears the fences, I will go too, which can have some negative kind of, feelings to it. And after I read the poem, I had people coming up asking me how the little girl was. And this was a story I heard from a nurse practitioner when I was at the beach once, and I was so struck, I was haunted by it, that I wrote it. So I had to be careful when I read from my first book to say, well, not all of this is biographical. There are more things, obviously, in these that are, but I still write others that are not. So it's good to sort of expand your borders and try different things, I think.
Oh, from the chat.
Amy Miller asks, can you talk about how you found the discipline to keep writing during the exhaustion of caregiving, or did you wait until later to write the poems?
Mostly I would wait. So there were times when I could take time off and go on residencies, which were so important. I took 2 different times. My friend Nancy in this room, she and her husband lent me their house at the beach twice, and that was the basis for a lot of the work I did in The Ferry Keeper, and that meant I could leave home, I could make sure, Phil was okay. I wouldn't leave except when he wasn't in crisis. When my parents were doing so badly, it was very hard to leave home, but sometimes my sister would come from Wyoming and spend a little time with them so I could get away. I know last summer when my book came out in June and my husband died in June, and all summer I could not read poetry, I could not write poetry, I was not interested, I was not called, there was just nothing. I was just gobsmacked all summer. So I thought, okay, well, this can't be good, but at the moment I don't care. And then what saved me is that one of my poetry groups was meeting in the beginning of September, and I thought, this is embarrassing. It's been 3 months. You need to get your act together, Judy, and write something, anything. And so I did, and then things started happening again, so I was able to do it more. As a side note, I also made a decision. This is going to sound a little weird, but I decided I was going to write my husband a letter every night after he died, which I did for 40 days, and then I kept on writing, not every day, and I still am doing it. I'm now in notebook number 2, and I don't look back at that and read it, and I'm not turning it into poems, so some of what might go into poems is actually in there, but it feels like I can't look at it till a year has gone by. So that's a sort of something over here. I don't know what that is, if I'll ever make use of that or not. But I have been writing a lot this fall, as my fellow poets in my groups can testify. I come and I say, and I apologize every time. I say, I'm so sorry, I'm still writing about Phil. And they assure me that it's okay. But I have only written, I think, 1 poem that's not. So I don't have the caregiving now. Now I have to take care of myself with my arm, which is a different matter. When I was caring for both of my parents and Phil and my son turned up with cancer, bad cancer. At the same time, I had a manuscript I was working on. I just put it away for 18 months. I just didn't do anything for quite a long time. So there is a conflict of interest and a kind of a drain and a feeling you just need to dedicate your resources to certain things. I tell a story, some of you have heard it, one day when I had done too many things for my parents and my husband, and I was in Fred Meyer's going down the aisle by the tomato sauce, And I decided that I was so tired that if I lay down and took a nap, people would just steer their carts around me. And I realized pretty quickly that that was not a rational thought. So I went home, but the toll was pretty serious. And you just keep thinking, well, I can get through this. I can do one more thing. And you have to, everybody keeps telling you and you pay no attention to them. And now I tell this to other people, you have to take care of yourself before you take care of other people. And they all nod, and I nodded, and you'd still go out and do more things than you should. So there's definitely been a trade-off. On the other hand, I've been blessed with some poems that I'm proud of, that I was pleased to write, and they have been helped by my groups quite a bit.
Judy's going to read a final poem.
Okay. So I mentioned that I sometimes write more political poems, and this kind of is. There's the city of, town of Rafah is mentioned in here, but it could be any of many other cities in Sudan or elsewhere. It just happens to be where this was set. The poem is called Against Despair. Today, hunched under bomb burst in Rafah, 3 men, bloodied, powdered by dust, scramble from their cracked shelter to the new crater, its fatal blaze, its blasted concrete walls, despite danger. Their bare hands tear at the debris, red rack line of war, to dig out someone, anyone, who might survive. Today it is a family, half buried beneath broken slabs. Ignoring mortar flare, they lever out the father, his trapped chest, ravaged body. Kneel to shift the unshiftable blocks, to free the infant daughter from wreckage, despite explosives that shred ground yards from where they work. They excavate the breathing baby, run her to shelter. I'm wrung raw by how the 3 men keep hurtling their bodies toward catastrophe, to extricate, to carry the wounded, stunned by their fierce intent against oblivion, to dig again, even as their own families may still be trapped. Despite, may they survive. May their names be sung from each remaining roof. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you for those of you who have logged on and are in the live stream. We're going to end the live stream now, and we will get the interview set up. Please stay. There are some refreshments over here. That'd be great to take a look at Judy's books. You can take a look at the interview. It's about 14 minutes. And thank you so much for coming. And thank you again, Judy. Yeah, thank you, everybody.